Hello, I am inserting this video before the video that you're about to watch because I found these later on, and part of me was like, should I include these? Should I not? Well, I'm including them now. These were like precursors to the player's guides. This would be in between the Nintendo Fun Club and the Nintendo Power actual volumes that came out. And I didn't include it in the checklist. I'm not including it in the checklist for the player's guides, even though they kind of are player's guides, because these are more like supplemental. So I'm putting them in with the special issues video. This is the official Nintendo's player's guides. And the great thing about this is, like, before Nintendo Power came out, they were establishing that these guides were going to be separate and different and not a part of Nintendo Power, although later on they became part of Nintendo Power. On the back of this, it doesn't say anything about Nintendo Power because I don't think Nintendo Power existed at this point. This was like the first big guide, and this was official from Nintendo, but it wasn't Nintendo Power. I have two copies of this. This one, the binding is pretty bad, but it has the stickers in it. And then there's another one that's the cover is beautiful and the binding is great, but the stickers were ripped out of it. So, but as you can see on the side here, they got the the adventure, the sports, the action, the shooting, all the different categories that Nintendo had when they had the black box games, which you will see at the back of the magazine. All the black box, where this was like within the first year of the NES coming out. These were the games that Nintendo themselves brought out and published. And, the NES was already going strong before Nintendo Power Magazine came about, and even before the Nintendo Fun Club newsletter was coming about. But I want to say that this is widely considered the Nintendo Bible, the Black Book, for the black box games. Although, you also have Gold for Zelda, and Kid Icarus and Metroid were silver. But regardless, here is the stickers that came in the back of this issue. The old school Link, a bunch of Mario stuff, including Mario with a gun. I always love that. And these Metroid ones. There's actually two Metroid stickers and only one Link Zelda sticker, so that's kind of crazy. But most of it's Mario, as you can see, Nintendo. But these were the stickers that came in the back of this. Again, this is considered the NES Bible, but the official title was the official Nintendo Player's Guide. There's 90 games in this. Now, many years later, when the as you can see, it's made to look like Nintendo Power, but it's not Nintendo Power because Nintendo Power was already dissolved at this point. But it's made to look like that because it says NES Classics, and it's made to also look like the NES Bible. But this was for the NES Classic, and they did this also for the Super Nintendo Classic, which you'll see soon. But next volume that we're going to is the official Super NES Game Guide. Now, this is different than the Green Book that was one of the first of four player's guides that you got for subscribing early or subscribing to Nintendo Power that one year. Craziness. But this is black and red. It's almost made to kind of be a mix of Nintendo Power, but also be the Nintendo Bible, but for the Super NES. And on the back of it, you can see it is produced by Nintendo Power. So the same people that worked on the NES and the Super NES Bible also worked on Nintendo Power. Just in the NES Bible's case, it was before Nintendo Power came out, and then this Nintendo Power is going strong. They even have the green lettering that they have in Nintendo Power Magazine to represent. You had red for Nintendo, purple for Game Boy, and the greenish, tealish lettering for Super Nintendo. And later on, here it is. This was for the Super NES Classic, which includes the games that were in the Classic, kind of like the NES Classic reprint. I can't really call it a reprint, but it was basically the games that were in the NES Classic, and then these were the games that were in the Super NES Classic. And this was sideways, so it kind of sits on my shelf kind of funny, kind of sticks out because it's very long, but it's not as tall. And I don't want to put it up on its side because, you know, I want to lay it, you know, the direction that it's supposed to go. No Nintendo Power markings on it. However, there is a Super Nintendo history in here. There's a history of a bunch of other stuff too, like the individual games and blah, blah, blah. It's pretty comprehensive. I think it's made by, it's not made by Nintendo Power because, again, Nintendo Power doesn't exist at the time that this was made. But I think it was made by Prima. And usually I don't get their stuff. They kind of took over where Future left off with the strategy guides for Nintendo games, going through the Wii U and even the Wii a little bit, I think, and on forward. But again, I wasn't into collecting the Prima guides, but I thought that this was cool because it was like a homage back to, you know, I had the NES Classic one, so I had to get the Super NES Classic one, basically. But there are a lot of references to Nintendo Power Magazine in this book here. So, hello and welcome to Dr. Gakman's Nintendo Power checklist. This time we're going to do a checklist for the special issues that Nintendo and then later on Future Publishing put out. These were mini guides, these were tip books, these were side, like, supplemental volumes of the magazine. They had all kinds of goofy stuff, especially when we get into Future. Right, this first part, we're going to talk about what was published by Nintendo of America, Nintendo Power Magazine. This is called Pocket Power. There is no other Pocket Power. It's like designed like as if maybe there was other ones, but it doesn't say volume 1. There was no other volumes of this. It was only for The Wizard. And this came on early on in the magazine before they even started going yearly because it was when the movie came out. In the magazine, the mainline magazine, there was a little mini interview with Fred Savage like they did with celebrities sometimes in the early years of Nintendo Power Magazine. And this was given out in extra on, like, you know, that was in the mainline magazine, but this was a whole other Pocket Power magazine. In the movie itself, I remember, because this is my favorite movie of all time, they talk about Power magazines, but they don't say Nintendo Power, of course. And some people will criticize the movie saying it's a big commercial for Nintendo, blah, blah, blah. Whatever. It was made by Universal, and if anything, they were showing off Universal Studios California, like the, what do you call it, amusement park or whatever. But blah, blah, blah. That's all beside the point. It was a great movie. If you are a kid at heart and you love Nintendo, watch it, definitely. If you haven't already, then shame on you. But again, people will criticize it or whatever. But this was a this game. This was given out free when you go see the movie in theaters. I don't know how long it lasted in theaters. You know, for it being a movie about playing video games instead of it being about, you know, video game characters. Around this time, you had like a Double Dragon movie, and you had the Super Mario Brothers movie that came out later, blah, blah, blah. This was kind of like an introduction to Super Mario Brothers 3. Enough about the movie. This is about the Nintendo Power. Pocket Power, The Wizard. This is staple bound like the next two volumes, or the next two mini magazines are here. So this, I don't know, I can't remember how many pages it had with it, but it's more than these next two, which are just mini guides. This was from Best Buy. To my knowledge, these were just given out free. Nintendo would have brochures or coffee table like guides, not even guides, but like little magazines and stuff. And again, this is not to be confused with any of those. This was actually from Nintendo Power themselves, but they were at retailers. And this has retailer name on it, Best Buy. This is for Ocarina of Time. Then the next one, also Nintendo 64 and also Nintendo Power, is Pokemon Stadium. It's called Trainer's Journal. This was Pokemon hype at this point. These three that I just listed here already are staple bound. These were pretty thin, like 10 pages about, whereas the Pocket Power for the Wizard movie was more than that. On to the next thing, you've got, this is set up like as if it's a player's guide, but it's actually, it just says official guide from the pros at Nintendo Power. It's Game Boy Camera Photography Guide. Now, I've heard of some people saying they got this for free. The barcode on the back of this and the next one, which is Super Game Boy, doesn't have a price above it. But I want to say that these were sold and or given away at retailers, or sold or given away through Nintendo Power Magazine. And they were published by Nintendo of America, Nintendo Power. This just has like tips on what you can do to play around with Game Boy Camera. So same thing with the Super Game Boy. For the Super Nintendo, it was an add-on that allowed you to play Game Boy games on your TV. This was about color schemes and tricks and things that you could do with the Super Game Boy add-on. Both of these, although this one's thinner, and I mean they're both thin as in like not very many pages, but what I mean is not thin binding, but just width-wise of the pages was smaller than like Nintendo Power Magazine. This was almost kind of like manga size, whereas this is kind of like the 10-inch guides from Nintendo Power Magazine for the player's guides. But again, really thin, not a lot of pages compared to those kind of guides. On to the next thing, next two things actually. They are both omnibuses. I'm calling them omnibuses because they were a collection of all the comics that were in Nintendo Power Magazine. Each of these comics was like 10 pages, and they did it for a year. So this is like, I don't know, like 120 pages, if that, about 100 pages each. I think they had the same artist and kind of manga-y, but I mean, they were, but they weren't, because they were very Americanized and they were made for Nintendo Power Magazine. But Nintendo Power sold them in the Super Power Supplies catalog. It doesn't say Nintendo Power on the cover, just like the Super Game Boy guide doesn't. But they were sold by Nintendo Power Magazine through the Super Power Supplies catalog. And they're just a collection of the comics that were in the mainline magazines. These were released later on, omnibuses. I've even seen them done by Dark Horse, and I believe, and hardcover versions, and they make them out to be like they're some long lost mangas from Japan or something like that, which no, they're from Nintendo Power Magazine. So they've been brought out before, after the Nintendo Power Magazine was no more. They've been brought out multiple times, and these are the original ones though, and these are good enough for me. I don't need to have them hardcover or have all the different versions of the exact same comics. Alrighty, then we got into an era. I could tell you a story about how at one point Yamauchi, which was the president of Nintendo Company Limited, or NCL, or Nintendo of Japan, the whole company basically, was talking about how they wouldn't even release GameCube in America. I think he was mad about the Xbox and mad about blah 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 and yada yada yada, and that that they would release Game Boy Advance, but this was a whole side story, and some people will remember this, some people won't. Some people will say it was just an internet rumor, oh, it was lost in translation interview, blah blah blah. He's the kind of excuse me, it would never happen. It would have never happened, but in an alternate reality, there was a version where they didn't release GameCube here in America, so they called this Nintendo Power Advance, which was just about Game Boy Advance. Now, they only did 4 volumes of these, and it was within the first year of Nintendo Power, or Nintendo Game Boy Advance coming out. And none of these, to my knowledge, had any kind of weird posters or inserts. I shouldn't say to my knowledge. I know that they didn't. These were sold separately at retail. That's why they have 2 different barcodes for Canada and America. But they were also given to subscribers of the magazine for that year, I believe, if you subscribe at the right time or whatever. These were seasonal. They came out, let me see if they even have a date on here. They don't really have a date on here, but I remember they came out. 1 came out, at the beginning of the year, and then 2 came out in the middle, and then 1 came out at the end. So it was like a seasonal magazine. But they only ever did 4 of these. So, and well after Nintendo Power Advance, when the DS was out, Nintendogs was hitting pretty big. And there's Chihuahua, Labrador, and Dachshund, right? Well, there was, and this was hard for me to obtain because every time I would go to buy it online later on, because I found out that there was a special edition one that was for Dalmatian, which says Dalmatian and Friends breeds included. These, again, they did not say Nintendo Power on them, but they were published by Nintendo of America. And it was basically near towards the end of Nintendo Power, or Nintendo themselves publishing Nintendo Power magazine, and then going into the Wii era and forward, and 3DS and Wii U. That was all handled by Future, so they did their own thing. But yeah, these were, I think, either given away at retail, or they were, I don't think that they were sold by Nintendo Power Magazine itself, but I do remember I had a hard time getting this second one because every time I would buy it online, they'd keep sending me this one. Even though it said Dalmatian, it didn't have the Dalmatian one. So I had to buy like 3 times before they would show the wrong picture, or they would just have a stock photo and it would be the wrong thing when I would get it on eBay or some bookstore or something like online. But I did eventually find it. So yes, there are 2 different versions of this. Because later on they had a Dachshund version of the game, or a Dalmatian version of the game, sorry. Alrighty, now we are into the Future publishing. And this is where things get crazy. Alright, I gotta tell you, Future kind of ran this stuff into the ground. On the text version of this checklist on my blogger, I'm gonna have the name of them as they are on the binding. And I'm also going to have in parentheses next to the name what they had above the barcode, which said, in this case, poster book. And I'm not going crazy with the full titles of these, because some of them, they just kept saying like Nintendo Power Presents, Ultimate Guide, Official Guide, Special Collector's Issue. And it's like none of these were a part of the subscription. These all had to be bought separately. A couple of these were staple bound because they came with posters, or they were just poster books. Like this one. This one came with 40 posters. Kind of like centerfold style, or just 2-page posters, or, fold out posters. You took them all apart I never took any of these apart. I was trying to figure out how many of these that they made. They even advertised some of these that never got released because the magazine was already over with by the time they would have released these. So we're just going to go through this list I now found a list online proper. So that's why I'm doing this, so that you guys can figure out which ones there are out there. This one is called Nintendo Power Posters. This one is the Wii Handbook, which that's what it says on the binding, although it has a bunch of other stuff presented by Nintendo Power, blah, blah, blah. Then there's also the Nintendo Power Presents the 2008 Wii Game Guide. So when you look at the text list, you can get a better idea of when, because it'll say something like display until June 8th, 2008. I have that written up there, so you know, and that's how I listed these, is by the date of when they said that they were supposed to be displayed by, so that, you know, there was gaps of these where they had them for like every season or every other month, and then there was gaps, or it felt like every other month, and then other times they would have them to where they would only have them like once or twice a year. So like I said, they were just running this kind of thing into the ground. It was crazy. Then they had a DS game guide, or should I say Nintendo Power Presents the 2008 Nintendo DS game guide. Were they planning on doing more of these in this same vein? Probably, because again, they were running this stuff into the ground. But to my knowledge, the ones that I'm listing here are the only ones that there are. Sometimes they advertise them on the Nintendo Power Mainline magazine that Future was publishing. Sometimes, but most of the time they didn't have like a list of when or what was coming. They just randomly would put them out. It's like they were trying to milk everything they could, hoping that people who are collecting Nintendo Power magazine, like me, would buy anything Nintendo Power, even if it wasn't really Nintendo Power. I mean, it was, because it said Nintendo Power, but it was not published by Nintendo anymore. It was Future. You know, I've already displayed said my disgust in Future Publishing when they did the mainline magazine, because they had different covers and different goodies for subscribers and newsstand. So you almost had to buy the magazine twice, like me, like an idiot, to get all the goodies. Same thing with this. These were extra ones that you had to just keep buying over and over to try to figure out, you know. But again, to the best of my knowledge, this was the way they did it. And then the next one was Nintendo Power Presents the 2008 Wii Plus Nintendo DS Holiday Buyer's Guide. Gee whiz, that's a mouthful, isn't it? I just put on the list Wii Plus Nintendo DS 2008 Holiday Buyer's Guide, but blah, blah, blah. So that one was that. And like I said, again, in parentheses on the text list, I have when it said that it was supposed to be displayed by. The next one looks very similar to the other one that said handbook, but it's 2009. Then there's 20 years of Nintendo Power, which, by the way, was in their 21st year by the time they did this, so a little goofy. Collector's special. Oh, boy. Then the next one is another poster book, this time with Luigi on the front, 33 posters. And this one was staple bound as well, so that you can get at the posters better. I mean, these are cool posters, don't get me wrong, but, you know, the way they did this was like way too much. They were capitalizing on the Wii phenomenon, the Nintendo DS phenomenon, and they were just like pumping out it seemed like 3 or 4 magazines a month at some points, which was crazy. And then you got Nintendo Power Summer Games, yeah. So there you go, the DSi, the Wii. And then we've got the 2010 calendar for Nintendo Power Magazine. It has 1 calendar, 89 stickers, 12 posters. Woo! The next one is a Mario, which actually there's 2 Mario books and there's 2 Zelda books. And they talked about, I want to say that they talked about a 3rd Mario book, but again, by the time they would have released this, the magazine would have been long gone, because this was in 2010 and the magazine ended in 2012. And then you got Zelda. This one has, let's see here. I think this Mario one was staple bound too, because there was some posters in it. Yeah, 10 posters it says. Back to the Zelda one, there's a seal here that's gold foil. And this one, let me see here. This one was also staple bound because it came with 10 posters and 18 stickers. Woo! And then 10 more posters. This one was also staple bound. It's called Mario Second Edition, like as if, you know, in case you missed the first one, here's the second one. It's the same stuff. No, it's actually different stuff, and it's kind of ridiculous. Like I said, I'm displaying a lot of my disgust here by talking about this so much, but Future was running this into the ground. And then there's the Nintendo Gaming Superstars Volume 1. They never made a Volume 2. I think they advertised the Volume 2 just like they advertised a third edition of the Mario book, but they never released it, to my knowledge. You know, I hope I'm right about that. I don't want to be wrong because I don't want to have to keep hunting these down, because these were crazy to try to hunt down because there was no official list. And again, the display dates on here, there's no pattern. So they did seem to have a winter or holiday one. They would seem to have something for the summer most years, but sometimes it was, you know, this is 2011, by the way. And now we're into 2012, and this is another staple bound one because it comes with bonus posters inside. And also it's got a Zelda Second Edition. It says, or it's got a gold background, foil background here. And yeah, I'm looking at my notes here. That's why I'm stuttering. So, and then the next one is Nintendo 3DS, which is actually the last of these because it has a silver collector's special seal up there. And I want to say that this one was not staple bound because it didn't have posters in it. But yeah, it was just like a thing that said Nintendo Power or Nintendo 3DS. It was, I don't know if they were trying to because there was a lot of companies that were bringing out guides, because since Nintendo Power wasn't officially publishing it themselves and they weren't making guides themselves, I think the guides at this point were going to maybe Ziff Davis or what's another one of those, Prima, whatever. But I don't count those. I barely count Future. It says Nintendo Power, and so I count that, but barely, because again, Future kind of ran this stuff into the ground. And then here's all of them together. Somebody just took one of the Nintendo Power stickers that was offered in one of the magazines at one point and put it on this. These are both from the Nintendo Power Super Power Supplies catalog, the clear one and the black one. And that's what I put my supplemental guides in. So yeah, that's how I store them ahead of the first year Nintendo Power magazine. There's also some other goodies in between there, like I got a folder and blah, blah, blah. But if you want to talk about more goodies or hear about more goodies or see more goodies, check out the next video that I will eventually have, which will be about the Nintendo Power Super Power Supplies catalog items that I had bought over the years. At first when they were out, and then later on I tried to collect some more, which includes these binders, or not binders, but magazine holders and other such items. And then it'll also include some items that were not in the Nintendo Power Super Power Supplies catalog. You know, these are items that I have myself, and I will be compiling that into a video. That'll be a more complicated video probably than this one. This one was pretty simple, especially compared to the last one, which was for the guides. There wasn't so many of these supplemental volumes, but for those who want to collect everything Nintendo Power, you gotta also get the supplemental guides like I got, or the supplemental magazines or side issues or volumes or whatever you want to call them. But yeah, that's the list of those. Thanks for watching.